I would like to speak this week about the subject of loss and mourning in Jewish tradition. This past Tuesday, the Jews throughout the world marked the beginning of a 3-week period known in Hebrew as Ben HaMitzarim, the period of time between the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av, to remember the many sadnesses that have occurred to the Jewish people, including the destruction of our first and our second temple. During this time, traditional Jews refrain from performing weddings or contracting engagements. During this period of time, many Jews refrain from overt celebration. They refrain from taking haircuts or shaves. They even cease to eat meat or drink wine as we become closer to the holiday of Tisha B'Av, in remembrance of the sadness that we as a people have experienced. It is interesting. Not all people choose to remember the sadnesses and defeats of their history. Among many peoples in ancient times, they never recalled their losses, they never recalled their failures. They only celebrated their victories. And to look at their ancient monuments, one would have to believe that they never suffered loss and they were always victorious. But the Jewish people were different. We not only acknowledge the defeats and the failures of the past, we also marked those events in our lives, and we made them centerpieces in the history of our people and in the quality of our celebration of the year. Every Passover night at the Seder table, we recall the servitude in Egypt and the suffering of our ancestors as slaves in Egypt. On every Hanukkah celebration, we recall the fact that our people were persecuted, and we recall the martyrs who died in order to attempt to keep Judaism alive. And on every celebratory Purim day, we recall the fact that we were close to destruction at the hands of an enemy. The Jewish people has recognized the power not only of remembering our joy and our happiness, but also remembering the potential disasters that we have managed to overcome. I would like to share with you an insight about loss. Our rabbis tell us, in regard to the loss of Jerusalem, that only those who mourn for Jerusalem will be worthy someday to celebrate its rebuilding. What do they mean? They mean that only those who continue to remember the bitterness of loss, the bitterness of defeat, only they will maintain the courage and the conviction to keep their spirits alive and eventually to reach the time of redemption. For 1900 years, the Jewish people had lost Jerusalem. From the time of the Roman destruction and up until modern times and our return to the land of Israel, Jerusalem was a dream in our hearts, but not a reality. At every Jewish wedding, when the bridegroom stepped on the glass under the chuppah, he recalled in the moment of his greatest joy the sadness and the loss of the destruction of Jerusalem. In every Jewish home, a wall would be left unfinished on the eastern side of the house to remind us of the fact that though we might be at ease, Jerusalem was still in exile. And whenever we prayed, we remembered Jerusalem in our daily prayers and in the statement we made twice each year at the end of Passover and the end of Yom Kippur, L'Shana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim. Our rabbis have told us that only those who are able to mourn for Jerusalem are worthy to rejoice in its reestablishment. What I believe our rabbis were saying is, you have to mourn for something. Something has to touch your heart in order for you to truly value it. And when you truly value it, you will do what you have to change reality and to make your fondest dreams come true. For 2,000 years, the Jewish people have lived without the central part of their lives as a people and as a nation. But we did not become victims. We use the remembrance of loss to remind ourselves that so long as we continue to hope, so long as we continue to dream, it is possible to turn tragedy, even great tragedy, into eventual triumph. About 130 years ago, the great Jewish statesman Theodore Herzl once said, Im tirtzu enzo agada. If you will it, it is no dream. What Herzl meant by that was that a people who continues to aspire to overcome the travails and the difficulties of the past, a people who continues to dream and hope for the future, will one day succeed. Herzl perhaps could not have imagined that his prophecy would be fulfilled in our own day, not only with the return of the Jewish people to their land in Israel, but also to the reunification of the city of Jerusalem and the restoration of an active Jewish life. And so I say to you, during these 3 weeks of remembrance, let us remember the difficulties and the failures of the past, but let that never prevent us from striving to build our future. Shabbat Shalom.